Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jadley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you so very much for being part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family, helping us to help families grow closer through reading. We would love it if you could subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Ghana, Himalaya, Podbean, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is the author of Pizza Boy and the Super Squad, and he's a really, really fun guy. I can't wait to introduce you to our guest, Dan Allen. Hey, before our guest comes in, we gave a sneak preview of the Solve It for Kids podcast here on Reading with Your Kids, and it was so popular, it's like spun off. It spun off into its own thing. And my buddy, our dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson, is here to tell us a little bit about what's going on with this great new podcast. Hey, Jennifer, what's up?
Hi, Jed. Oh, I am so excited about our new podcast. We've been getting some great reviews. Everybody wants to find out what's going on and meet and listen to some of our scientists and engineers. We have done how do you map an underwater forest?
Yeah.
We have done how do you cut a person in half safely? Of course.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
We have talked about improving your connection with water by going on a water walk, and we have watched Vanessa Brantley Newton create illustrations that come to life.
I took a water walk with my amazing niece. We had such a great time. I didn't fall into the water, but it was really, really fun. And I love the fact that all of our guests are giving our wonderful listeners challenges, really fun challenges that they can do together as a family. And that's so cool. Hey, tell everybody where they can find Solve It for Kids, because it's not on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. It's its own thing.
So please, if you want to keep listening, go over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and subscribe. And you can download all 4 of the first episodes that we have, plus listen to all the new ones we have coming out. You can also find on Stitcher Radio and, of course, through our website, solveitforkids.com.
Jennifer, thanks so much. Thanks for letting me be part of this awesome podcast.
Well, we make a great STEM team, don't you think?
Absolutely. All right, join us over at solveitforkids.com. Joining us right now high atop the Rocky Mountains in Utah. I'm really excited. We have a guest on today who's here to talk about his brand new middle grade novel, Pizza Boy and the Super Squad. But I think we're going to be getting into talking about a lot of really cool things. Please welcome to the show, Dan Allen. Dan, how are you?
I'm really great. Thanks for having me.
Unlike a lot of authors, we're right now, through the magic of technology, Dan and I are able to see each other. He's able to look into my studio here and see the Reading with Your Kids banner hanging behind me, hiding all the junk that's behind that. Usually when I'm looking through a screen at an author, they're sitting in front of a bookcase, or they're maybe on a couch with a cat behind them. But today I'm looking at Dan, and he is literally inside a secret scientific laboratory, and there's this thing behind him that keeps the world safe as he's tinkering with atoms and protons and things like that. This is a really cool experience for me.
This is the not-so-secret laboratory, because everyone knows about it, but it's where I work, yeah. I'm an inventor for a microchip company, and I make all kinds of parts that go into smartphones and other things.
I would definitely, I want to get into Pizza Boy and the Super Squad, but I have a hard time. I'm involved in a great podcast called Solve It for Kids, and we've talked to scientists and engineers and nuclear physicists and oceanographers and astronauts. The thing that baffles my mind the most are the engineers and the inventors who are working with things that you can't see. They're so tiny, they need these giant magnifying glasses and scopes to be able to see them. And in some cases, they still aren't able to see them after they smash them together. And you're working on creating things that go on chips that are like smaller than your fingernail.
Yeah, this is a prototype right here. You can see it. It's about the size of a dime of what's the world's smallest spectrometer. It's a little thing that separates light out like a rainbow in a prism and measures how much of each color there is. And that's just one of the things I'm working on right now.
This is, you know what? I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because I'm just going to get lost and my mind is going to explode and we're not going to have a chance to talk about Pizza Boy and the Super Squad. So, Dan, please let us know what this novel is all about.
Pizza Boy and the Super Squad is a story of sort of wannabe superheroes living in southern Idaho, living in suburban or rural America, having the kind of life that kids have where they kind of live in a place they're not too proud of, and they kind of want to get out of there. But at the same time, the town needs them. And in particular, Peter Barnes, who was born on the same day as his next-door neighbor, J. Lee Yates, faces this awkward predicament because when he was born, the hospital receptionist embroidered his onesie with the letters PB, and Jay Lee was born that day, and hers got embroidered with the letter J, and someone thought it would be cute to put the babies together in a picture, and this, of course, blew up on social media, and their town became synonymous with a town that put PB and J together. And it's even on their town sign, and every storefront in town has a picture of the lovely infant couple, PB and J, and Peter's now 14 years old, and he's not really into this anymore, So he has to make a decision about whether he's going to, be what the town wants him to be, or whether what he's going to be, what he wants to be. And so he decides to dump Jay. And she goes off the deep end and gets in league with a work-from-home supervillain named Soccer Mom, and hilarity ensues.
You got me sold. I mean, this is that concept. I was going to go into this conversation about we all have to choose about whether or not we're going to be the person we want to be, or the person that our parents want us to be, or society. But and I know there's a lot of that we can talk about in Pizza Boy and the Super Squad. But it's just too silly and fun, it sounds like. I'm imagining that you must have been laughing your head off as you were writing this book.
Oh, man. I can tell you, you cannot make a book this funny without help from kids. That's for sure. So when I was in the drafting phase, and if we came up with the idea as a family, I've got a whole grundle of kids, and we were sitting around the table and coming up with ideas for just goofy characters. One of my favorite characters in the story, part of the Super Squad, is a robot named Slurry. It's the slightly less understandable robot intelligence. It was developed by Idaho National Laboratories to test things like Siri and Alexa to see if they could understand weird accents. And so Slurry can talk Valley Girl, Idaho Hick, Redneck, and Wheezy Old Man. It's an egg-shaped robot. It's powered by a plutonium power source because that's all Idaho National Labs has, and it's just a cement egg with like a one speaker in the front, and it's sort of a quadriplegic robot, but it knows a lot and it talks really funny. So, but I mean, only a kid could come up with that, And we sat down and my kids had a lot of fun in the creation of this story because I was able to sit down and talk to them. Okay, now we need a low point in the story. What's going to happen in the low point of the story? And now but the first thing we did is we said, we need a theme. And the kids are like, well, what's a theme? What's a theme? I said, well, a theme is a question that the main character gets asked. And in the crisis moment of the story, that the main character has to decide how they're going to be or which way they're going to choose. And in Pizza Boy, that theme is whether it's more important to be who you want to be and discover yourself, or whether it's more important to just be the person that the people who love you need you to be. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people in their life. Some people want to just head off and discover themselves in the world, but hey, maybe they've got people who need them. And so that's interesting. The most interesting themes in books are ones where you can see kind of something good about this side and something kind of good about that side, and you really want to jump into the story to kind of explore which side is best.
Yeah. And that's, as I was saying earlier on, that's the kind of question and dilemma that a lot of kids face. It's a lot of grown-ups still face too. we're living in a world. We're living in a world where your company is in different parts of the world, and you are in your not so secret laboratory in the Rocky Mountains. But other people have to make choices, and they have to move to where their job is, and that might mean moving away from family and picking up the kids and uprooting them. And so, yeah, it's like a kind of a question that people are faced with all the time.
So even though it's a silly book, it's something that can help you think about some of the things you're experiencing in your own life and think about where you want to go with your life. As a kid, I grew up in a small little town where everybody's dad worked out at a rocket factory. And that was pretty cool. In fact, they let us out of school and we stood out and we watched as they tested some of the booster rockets for the space shuttle like 20 miles away. And you could just see this plume of smoke shoot up into the air from over the curve of the earth. And then suddenly we'd start counting and about 30 seconds later, you'd feel this rumble in the ground. So early on in my life, I really got into science and decided I wanted to be a physicist, but that meant leaving my hometown. Mm-hmm. That meant there was no college there, so I had to leave my hometown. I went and lived a few years overseas as a volunteer missionary. Then I came back and I studied physics, and that took me to California, where I lived near the beach and worked in a laser laboratory. There's two kinds of physicists. One's like Einstein with the curly hair and the crazy-eyed expression. They fill up pages and pages of math on the and then they shriek, Eureka, and they run down the street in their underwear because they're so excited about some science. Anyway, and the other kind of physicist is the kind that you imagine, with some laser goggles on down in a dark basement, and you hear this sound in the background, and they're like, okay, turn it on. Smoke everywhere. Shut it down. That's more the kind I was, the experimental physicist. And then I got involved in some national laboratories and some companies there. But at one point in my career, I had a chance to move away from the big, busy city and move back to quiet, rural, mountain West America. And that was an interesting decision point for us. And we, as a family, we decided we were going to do it. So we quit our job there and we came to Utah to run a company making smart toilets, which failed. But it was a really fun job.
All right. I have to ask, what is a smart toilet?
Well, this toilet was designed to measure the health of your body, so you didn't have to get poked with a needle, which I think kids everywhere would celebrate. It just measured everything that came out of your body and to figure out what was going on inside of it. It had spectrometers and weight sensors. It could tell your blood pressure just by sitting on it. It was pretty neat. Lots of cool technology, but the business team didn't work out, and eventually I got fired. And that happens. Now, even to smart people, even to good people.
Yeah. Now, before coronavirus hit us, I would have thought it was silly to think that examining what came out of you and into the toilet, how can you figure out how healthy someone is? But that's happening right now. I mean, here in Boston, we're always, reading these news reports like, there's a surge coming. How do we know? Well, because they're measuring it in the poop that's being filtered out, and they're thinking there's a lot more people who are sick than know that they're sick.
These conversations don't go very well at the dinner table. My mother-in-law is talking to my wife. I was CTO, Chief Technology Officer, but my kids called me Chief Toilet Officer. And my mother-in-law was talking to my wife. She's like, Amanda, can we not talk about your husband's job at the dinner table? Okay.
Well, which brings me to another point, and you obviously you said you had this. You have a gaggle of. You used a different word, but you have a big number of kids.
It's a grundle. It's slightly less than a plethora. It's a technical term.
Yes, I'm familiar with that. Well, thank you for clearing that up and letting us know. You obviously talked to your kids about Pizza Boy and the Super Squad as you were writing it, but you also you were talking to your kids about the smart toilet, and I think that is something that not enough families do. And I'm not just talking about toilets at the dinner table, but I don't think there are enough families out there talking about what parents are doing in their jobs. I've met lots of kids.
I've often thought about writing a book called something like, business shenanigans for kids, getting smart about corporate stupidity. Because there's a lot of weird stuff that happens in business, and kids don't get to hear about it until it's too late. When they've grown up and they have a great invention, and then as we discussed, someone you knew, their company got taken over and everyone got fired, and no one saw that coming. And sometimes there's a lot of strange things that can happen. And so in the world of business, we read about, when we're kids, we read stories about monsters and dragons. But when you grow up, these monsters and dragons are real. They're your competitors, and they're people that are unscrupulous. That's a big word for naughty. And, and so what I think is great is for kids to ask their parents, say, hey, teach me about the business shenanigans that you're having to deal with lately. And the kids can get wise on some of the strange things that happen in business, and then they'll be a little bit smarter. But kids have to take the initiative and ask, because parents don't want to burden their kids with the problems they're facing. Kids should have a fun life, but you know what? Kids are curious and ready to learn, and the more you learn from your parents about the kinds of struggles they're facing, the more prepared you'll be to face those real dragons and monsters when you graduate.
I absolutely agree. And I think one of the things that prevents these kind of conversations from happening is a lot of times parents, they feel that they have to be perfect, and they have to have all the answers, and they can't let their kids see that they're struggling. And the advice that I always give parents is the exact opposite. Let your kids know that you're struggling. Let them know that it's hard, and let them know that you don't have all the answers, because that's number one. It's the truth. But
the secret to being a great adult is just being a great kid.
Yeah.
Kids look at adults and think, oh, these guys are perfect. And when you get to an adult, you're like, wait, I'm an adult now, and I'm not perfect. It's not working. The system is broken. So it's true. It's true. But the kids are a lot smarter than parents think, and they're a lot stronger than parents think. And they want to help, and they want to understand what's going on. There was a time in my career where I got fired, and I thought this was going to be the worst thing ever. But I got to spend a few months doing things I'd never done before, like I got to walk my kids to school. And I found out that I didn't just have to take the first job that came along. I could make some decisions and try to find my own way. And once I'd been fired, I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Yeah. And then I found my dream job as an inventor, and I've had a lot of fun ever since. It could have gone really badly. I could have become homeless, but luckily that didn't happen. I think I'd make a nice homeless person, but I also make a great inventor.
Well, we're happy that you are inventing. I gotta say, Dan, we grew up with stereotypes in our lives, and you were saying, there's a couple of different kinds of engineers, and you're talking about the Einstein with the hair and the underwear running down the street. But I think a lot of one stereotype that a lot of people have about inventors is these kind of quiet, nerdy little guys who don't have a sense of humor. You seem to have found 2 or 3 senses of humor in your travels.
Not everyone's the same, and a lot of the engineers I work with are really more gifted at details than I am. Mm. I'm a high level, fun ideas kind of person, and my strengths are actually in communicating ideas. I'm really good at sharing ideas, explaining things. I can explain to little kids how a laser works so they can understand it. So I'm kind of like a translator of science. And a lot of the other books I've written, you'll see that they feel really realistic because I'm sneaking in little bits of truth about science in there. And so one of the things that you'll find as you look at careers, sometimes it's not your number one strength that's the most important in getting career satisfaction. Like my number one strength is my math and science skills. But my secondary strength is my communication skills. That's the thing that makes me different from everyone else, and that's the thing I use in my career that brings me the most satisfaction. So kids need to be aware not just of what their biggest strengths are. They can't just identify with the number one stereotype. Okay, I'm a math guy, or I'm a writer. But maybe you're somebody who has some interest in entrepreneurialism. That means starting companies and trying new things, right? Being daring. Look at your second interest. That's the thing that really will help you to find a career where you can thrive. That's a trick that kids should know.
Yeah, and it's a trick that parents should know, because we need to be the ones who help our kids learn that and understand that, instead of being the people who a lot of times it's the parents who pigeonhole kids. Oh, you're the dancer, you're the basketball player, you're the brainiac, you're the math guy, you're the science guy. And yeah, so we can't allow ourselves to be putting those labels on our kids.
Yeah, well, it's that secondary thing that gives you the fulfillment.
Yeah.
Because you're going to do the first thing, you're going to do the thing you're good at, right? But it's that secondary skill or interest that really provides both motivation and fulfillment in our careers. I think that's important for parents to know as well as for kids. But we're not supposed to put labels on people. But in our family, we have committees. There's the science committee. There's the cleanliness committee. There's the organization committee, of which I'm not a part. Yeah. And we joke about these committees, and sometimes someone will stand up and say, the cleanliness committee objects to the placement of socks at the top of the stairs. And, it's pretty funny.
Hey, I gotta know, where does a dad of a grundle of kids, it's slightly less than a plethora, and an inventor of smart toilets, where does this guy find the time to write hilarious middle grade novels?
I don't watch TV. It's really simple. I played a lot of sports when I was a kid. I did soccer. In college, I was a springboard diver, doing all the flips off into the pool and stuff like that. But at one point, I realized my body was falling apart. I had to hang up my Speedo and I had to and put on other clothes. Anyway, and go back to being a nerd, which I turned out to be a little bit better at than being an athlete. But at that point, my kids weren't super interested in watching sports with me on TV, so we did other things. Mm-hmm. And I found that not watching TV and sports is like having so much free time you can't even imagine. It's amazing. It is. Secrets. The secret sauce to being a productive person.
The secret sauce of being a productive person. Shut down the TV and the devices. I love that. I love that idea. What other books have you written? I know you've written a bunch. What other books that should parents absolutely check out in addition to Pizza Boy and the Super Squad?
So I don't want to hide this. I've written several books, and as the books either got ready for publishing or as the books hit the presses, the actual publishers went out of business. And so it was like having a dump truck just sort of fall on top of me. Oh, ouch, but Pizza Boy is going to be my first book that comes out. It really hits bookshelves and stores that I'm excited that kids can actually see it and pick it up and be like, okay, I need this. Yeah, you need this book. But I did recently do a couple of books that came out. One was for young adults called The Exalting. It's a thriller. It's a long epic story, super fun. But for parents and kids, I also I was involved with a group of 5 authors that was invited to do something called a novelization. So there was a board game that people like called Super Dungeon Explorer. It's sort of a chibi miniatures board game, tabletop, super geeky. And so we got access to all the lore. So can you imagine like going into the vault where they keep all the super secret Star Wars stuff, like all the stuff that hasn't come out in movies yet and all the other stuff, and like being able to look through that? Well, they gave us access to the vault where it had all the monsters and all the storylines and everything. And we basically got a craft story. So I got to write book 4 of the Super Dungeon series. Oh, and that was called Dungeons of Arcadia. And that was actually my first middle grade book. Everything else before that was like for adults or like, teens. And so that was my first chance at being zany. Uh-huh. And it turns out I think that's what I do best. I should have done this a long time ago. Like there's a scene where the princess drinks a potion and blows a giant pink bubble to save her friends. I'm like, obviously.
Yeah,
obviously.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, this is awesome. I just love spending time crawling around the mind of Dan Allen. It's hilarious and a bit terrifying, but so much fun. Where can folks go to kind of meet you online, get to know you better, get to know more about your books, and explore this imagination and hilarity of yours?
Well, it's all on authordanallen.com.
authordanallen.com. Now that Pizza Boy and the Super Squad,
they can check out my cosplay. We have this site. I don't know if you call it addiction or a problem, but every year we spend a little bit too much money at Halloween. The whole family gets involved, and we do a whole variety of costumes that on a theme. And awesome. So some of that's on the website, kind of fun to look at.
That's awesome. Well, we've had a great time speaking about a little bit of everything, about science, smart toilets, business shenanigans, and of course speaking about a great, hilarious middle grade novel, Pizza Boy in the Super Squad. And we've been speaking with our guest, Dan Allen. Dan, thanks so much for bringing a smile to our face and being with us on the show.
You're welcome.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We'll have two great guests for you. Coming to us from the island of Nantucket, right off the coast of Massachusetts, Barbara Tibbetts will be here to celebrate her Lookbook Hunt series. And then we'll travel on down to Mazatlan in Mexico to speak with Carolyn Watson-Dubish about fireflies. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. If you are the author of a fantastic children's book, we would love to have you as a guest on the podcast. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy. It doesn't cost you a thing. You don't need to pay for somebody to facilitate your appearance. It is a fun way to tell thousands of people about your fantastic children's book. All you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page, scroll on down to where it says, Be a Guest. I shouldn't really sing, should I? Hey, we want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to thank the very funny and talented and amazing Dan Allen. Please be sure to check out Pizza Boy and the Super Squad. Also want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my two amazing interns this semester, Alexia Brown, Hannah Pat O'Boyski. Also want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. I want to thank Augie the doggy for having my back here in the studio, but most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.